All right, welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you are sitting comfortably because today we're going to stare directly into the abyss.
Hmm.
And no, I don't mean the existential dread of modern life or the state of the economy.
Mm.
Though I suppose this is a very specific and very painful subset of that.
It's definitely related.
I am talking about something I call the content graveyard.
Yeah. It's such a striking visual, isn't it? But it's one that I think almost every single business owner or professional listening to this they'll recognize it instantly.
Oh, absolutely. It's that digital ghost town. You know the one?
Yep.
You're looking for a service provider.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a local architect, a financial consultancy, maybe a design firm, and you land on their website.
Yep.
The homepage looks sleek, the photos are nice, and you think, okay, these guys look legit. And then you click on the blog tab, or maybe it's called News or Insights, expecting to see something recent. And what do you find?
You find a post, and it's dated, November 14th, 2023?
Exactly. And the title is almost always something heartbreakingly optimistic like, Our Exciting Plans for the New Year.
And then just silence. Crickets.
Absolute silence. It's like a digital tumbleweed blowing across the screen. The whole thing is frozen in time. Or you check their social media and you see what I call panic posting.
Oh, yes. I think we've all been guilty of that at some point in our careers.
You know the drill. The business owner wakes up one morning, has a jolt of panic, realizes they haven't posted on LinkedIn in a month, feels this huge surge of guilt, and then just dumps 3 things in one afternoon.
Mm-hmm. And then they vanish again for another 6 weeks.
Yeah, it just feels abandoned. It feels unprofessional. But here is the thing that really, really surprised me in the research we're looking at today. This isn't just laziness. It's not that these business owners are sitting around, doing nothing. This is actually a structural crisis.
It really is. And I think it's so important that we validate that feeling for the listeners right now. If you're someone who has a content graveyard, it is not because you're bad at business. It's not a personal failing.
Right.
If we looked at the numbers, specifically for UK small and medium enterprises, SMEs, the scale of this graveyard is, well, it's actually quite alarming. The data shows that about 46% of UK SMEs admit they have absolutely no formal marketing strategy.
That is nearly half the market.
Nearly half, just waking up and, I guess, hoping for the best.
Oh.
And it gets worse. You have another 6% who are, they're just not sure if they have one or not.
Which, let's be honest, effectively means they don't.
Of course.
You have to ask yourself, do I have a strategy?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is a hard no.
Precisely. So you've got over half of UK businesses just winging it. But here's the paradox, and this is what we really need to dig into today because it's fascinating. It's not like the money isn't there.
Right. I saw this figure in the notes and I had to double check it because it seems so contradictory to this whole graveyard idea.
We've started calling it the content graveyard paradox. These same businesses, the ones with the empty blogs and the chaotic social media feeds, they plan to spend roughly £35.1 billion on marketing in 2024.
35 billion.
With a B. With a B. The capital is allocated. The intent is clearly there. They want to grow. They're willing to pay to grow. But the execution, it evaporates into thin air.
So if the money is sitting in the budget and the desire to grow is there, why is the blog empty? Why is the LinkedIn page a ghost town? What is the disconnect? Where does this happen?
It happens in what we call the expertise trap. The data shows that 65% of marketing activities in these companies are being managed by the business owners themselves.
Oh, okay.
Now you have to put yourself in their shoes. This is the same person who's running finance, who's trying to close big sales deals, who's managing operations. They're probably dealing with a crisis in HR or a supply chain issue that just blew up.
And suddenly, the idea of sitting down to write a thoughtful, engaging 800-word article about, trends in sustainable architecture or the nuances of changes in tax law, it just feels impossible.
It's the task that always gets pushed to next week. And then, of course, next week becomes next month. And that is how you end up with a blog post from November 2023. It's the task that always slides because it feels important, but it rarely feels urgent compared to a client fire that is burning right now in front of you.
That distinction between urgent and important is the absolute killer. So that's the premise of what we're unpacking today. We aren't just looking at how to write a better blog. That's too simple. We're looking at a structural solution to this capacity crisis.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert for everyone listening, the answer isn't just work harder or sleep less.
No. That's just a recipe for burnout, not for growth. And frankly, most SME owners I know are already working as hard as they physically can.
So today we're looking at a very specific mechanism, a kind of strategic corridor that's opening up between the UK and South Africa. And to really understand this, we're going to use a specific case study, a company called VAConnect.
And just to clarify that for the listener, that's VAConnect.
Right, VAConnect, we're using them as a lens here because we really need to distinguish between what most people know, which is the gig marketplace, places like Upwork or Fiverr, and what's called a managed agency.
Because they can sound similar on paper, but in practice, the outcomes are radically different.
Right. So our mission today is to figure out how an SME can move from just buying tasks, which ironically usually creates more management work, to actually having a strategic extension of their team. But before we get to South Africa and VAConnect, I want to play devil's advocate for a minute. Why are the default options failing? If I'm a London business owner and I'm staring at my empty blog, why don't I just hire someone in London?
It's the natural first instinct, isn't it? I need help. I'll just put out an ad. It feels safe. It feels local. But then you do the math. And this is usually where the conversation just grinds to a halt for a small business owner. If you want a mid-level content manager in London, and by that I mean someone who can actually write, manage a content calendar, maybe do a bit of social media strategy, not a graduate fresh out of school, but someone competent, you are looking at a base salary of between £35,000 and £45,000.
Which, on the surface, sounds expensive, but maybe manageable if you're growing. You might think, okay, 35K, maybe I can swing that.
But that's just the gross salary. That's what actually goes to the employee. As the business owner, you have to add the employer's national insurance contributions, the mandatory pension contributions, probably some benefits, the cost of their equipment, software licenses, the recruitment cost to even find them.
Right.
And that role is actually costing the business well over £50,000 a year.
Okay, so let's put that into context. If you're an SME with a turnover of, say, £2 million to £5 million, dedicating that huge chunk of cash pure overhead to one single marketing role is a massive, massive bet.
It's a huge risk, a huge fixed cost. If that person doesn't work out, or if you have a bad quarter and revenue dips, that £50 is a millstone around your neck. It's a fixed cost that doesn't scale down. So what happens? Businesses look at the price tag, they panic, and they decide to stay understaffed.
And they say, I'll just do it myself on weekends.
Exactly. And we end up right back in the content graveyard.
Okay, so that's option A off the table for most. So naturally, option B kicks in. You go to the internet, the gig economy, Upwork, Fiverr, freelancer.com. I feel like every business owner I know has a war story about this.
Oh, absolutely. I hired a guy for a logo and got a piece of clip art, or I paid for a blog post and it was clearly written by a very confused robot.
Exactly. And the data, it really backs up those war stories. We did a deep dive into the structural failures of these platforms, and it's quite revealing. Let's take Upwork. It's massive. Something like 18 million freelancers across 180 countries. You would think, statistically, with that many people, you are guaranteed to find a superstar.
It's the law of large numbers, right? There has to be talent there.
You think so?
And there is talent there, to be clear. But finding it is the problem. Some consumer review sites have their satisfaction rating at around 2.3 stars.
2.3, that's incredibly low for a major tech platform.
It is. The issue isn't necessarily that there's no talent, it's the sheer noise. It's what we call the quality trap. You post a job for a writer and you get 50 applications in an hour.
And 45 of them are just copy-pasted templates.
Exactly. Or they're from people who clearly haven't read your brief. Or even worse, they're from bots that are just auto-bidding on keywords. So now, instead of saving time, which was the whole point, you're spending your entire evening sifting through 50 bad applications to find maybe one or two decent ones.
It becomes a job in itself, just filtering the spam.
It's a full-time job. And then you've got Fiverr. I read this in the notes, the race to the bottom. This was fascinating to me because I always just assumed Fiverr was just cheap. But the algorithm itself actually enforces that cheapness, doesn't it?
It does. Fiverr was designed from the ground up to sell gigs. Quick, discrete, transactional tasks. The algorithm literally rewards the wrong kind of behavior for high-quality, strategic work.
How so?
It prioritizes order volume above all else. So if you're a freelancer on Fiverr, the way to get to the top of the search results, the way to get seen by clients, is to do fast, cheap work. High turnover is king. You want to churn out 10 logos a day, not spend 3 days on one perfect one.
Right. But strategy isn't fast. Brand building isn't fast.
Exactly. If you take your time to do a deep, strategic job for a client, say spending 3 days really understanding their brand voice and crafting the perfect article, you complete fewer orders that week. So the algorithm sees you as slower or less active than the person churning out junk.
So you actually get penalized in the rankings for doing better, more thoughtful work.
Effectively, yes. You become invisible. The entire system is designed to push the fast food of content, not the gourmet meal. It forces this relentless race to the bottom on both price and quality.
That explains so much. I saw this horror story in the source material about a book author. Did you catch that one?
Yes, the publishing professional. This is a perfect, almost painful example of the quality trap in action. This author hired 9 different freelancers on Fiverr to help with various book publishing tasks.
9 different people.
Formatting, cover design, editing, trying to piece it all together like a puzzle.
And what was the result? It was a disaster.
A complete disaster.
Yeah.
Every single project needed remediation, meaning they had to pay someone else to go in and fix the work they'd already paid for. But it gets worse. 2 of the books were actually blocked by Amazon, literally removed from sale, because the quality was so poor, it violated their terms of service.
Wow. Just want to pause on that for a second. You pay for the cheap labor to save money, but you end up paying double in stress and fixing it, and then your final product gets you banned from the marketplace you were trying to sell on.
That's the hidden cost. We call it the total engagement cost. It's not just the fee you paid on Fiverr. It's the direct fee, plus your management time, plus the cost of fixing it, plus the opportunity cost, plus the reputational risk.
And there's an even more subtle problem with the gig economy when it comes to marketing specifically. Even if you get lucky and find a decent freelancer, you run straight into what we're calling the transactional paradigm.
Okay, break that down for us. Transactional paradigm.
Gig work is fundamentally about closing a contract. I pay you, you give me a logo, I pay you, you edit this audio file. It's a transaction, it begins and it ends. But content strategy, building a brand, a voice, a relationship with an audience, is cumulative. It requires a relationship. It requires institutional memory.
Right. You need someone who remembers what you said last week, last month, last year.
Absolutely. If you hire a freelancer in January for a blog post and then you hire a different one in March for a newsletter, you get what we call tonal whiplash.
Tonal whiplash. I like that. It sounds painful.
It is for the reader. It's like the brand has a split personality. The January post sounds formal and academic, like it was written by a professor. The March newsletter sounds like it was written by a Gen Z TikToker. There is no consistent voice because there is no consistent human who understands the brand's journey and its values. You are literally restarting the relationship from scratch every single time you click order.
And I suppose for the freelancers, it's not a great system either. I saw a stat from Reddit in our sources that said freelancers are spending 20 to 30 hours a week just bidding on jobs.
It's incredibly inefficient. They are burning half their working week writing proposals and bidding against hundreds of other people, not actually doing the creative work. So the client is effectively paying for all that wasted time and the fees, and often getting recycled or rushed content because the freelancer needs to move fast to make up for the hours they lost just trying to win the job.
It's a broken model for any kind of long-term strategic growth.
Completely broken.
So let's just recap where we are. Option A, local hiring, is too expensive and risky for the average SME. That £50K price tag is a lot of money. Option B, the gig marketplace, is a quality minefield and a time sink that leads to tonal whiplash. This brings us to the core of our deep dive today, the South Africa advantage. Now, I'll be honest, before reading this, I knew outsourcing happened. I think my brain immediately goes to India or the Philippines. But I didn't realize there was a specific strategic corridor opening up between the UK and South Africa.
It's rapidly becoming one of the most significant strategic partnerships in the B2B services world right now. And it's not random. It's not a fluke. It is based on 3 very specific structural advantages. And honestly, only one of them is really about cost. The other 2 are actually far more important for the day-to-day reality of getting work done.
Okay, let's start with the most practical one, the time zone. Because I think people really underestimate how deeply annoying and inefficient time zones can be until they actually try to work across them.
This is huge. It's probably the biggest non-financial advantage. South Africa is on GMT +2. That means they are only 2 hours ahead of the UK. And depending on daylight savings, sometimes it's only a 1-hour difference.
Okay, so contrast that with, say, the Philippines or India, which is what most people traditionally think of when they hear outsourcing.
Exactly. If you outsource to Asia, you are dealing with a 5 to 8 hour time difference. Now, let's just play out a simple scenario. You're a business owner in London. It's Tuesday morning. You need a newsletter out by Thursday. You have a brilliant idea at 9:00 a.m. You want to discuss it with your virtual assistant. If they are in Manila, It's already late afternoon for them. They might be finishing their day. They're tired. Or they're already offline and with their family.
So you send an email into the void and hope for the best.
You send an email. You get a reply the next morning when you wake up.
Hmm.
But maybe they've misunderstood one small but crucial detail. So you have to reply back to clarify. Now you're waiting another 24 hours for their response. It's a 24-hour lag on every single decision loop.
That just kills all momentum. You can't be agile like that. You can't react to things in the market.
It completely destroys agility. It's like communicating via carrier pigeon. But with South Africa, you start your day at 9:00 a.m. in London. Your assistant in Cape Town is at 11:00 a.m. They're in the flow. They've had their coffee. They've cleared their morning emails. You can jump on a Zoom call immediately. You can Slack back and forth in real time. It allows for genuine collaboration, not just handing off tasks.
It feels like they're just in a different office building, not on a different continent.
That's the goal. It removes that remote friction. Then there's the second advantage, the cultural aspect. The sources mention linguistic affinity. Now, does this just mean they speak good English? Because, a lot of people all over the world speak excellent English. It goes much, much deeper than just grammar or vocabulary. South Africa and the UK share a deep, albeit complicated, history, British colonial history, parliamentary traditions, similar legal frameworks. English is a primary business language there. But the key, the real magic, is in the nuance.
It's the humor, isn't it? British communication is.
Yeah.
It's a minefield of understatement and sarcasm.
It is the humor, it's the idioms, it's the sarcasm. The understatement is a huge one. British business culture relies so heavily on that kind of nuance. If a British client looks at a draft of an article and says, "That's a bit interesting," or, "I'm not sure that's quite right," they usually mean, "That's a terrible idea. Please delete it and never speak of it again."
Right. And with all due respect, usually means you are profoundly wrong and here's why.
Exactly. A South African professional gets that. They understand the subtext instinctively. A generalized AI or a freelancer from a totally different cultural context, say from Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia, might miss that cue completely. They might take "that's interesting" as a genuine compliment and keep producing more of the same.
The sources called it linguistic neutrality.
Yes. The South African accent, especially what you might call the business English accent, is very clear and familiar to UK ears. There's less of a cognitive load. The data we saw shows significantly fewer miscommunications and requests for clarification with South African teams compared to equivalent arrangements with Asian providers. It just removes a layer of friction. You don't have to translate your instructions into simplified, basic English. You can just speak naturally.
Okay, and then the third point, and this is where you get to geek out a bit, is infrastructure. Because I think there's still a stereotype out there that the internet connection in parts of Africa might be shaky or slow.
I do love good infrastructure, and yes, that stereotype is becoming rapidly outdated, especially in the major South African hubs. We have to talk about the subsea cables. This is the really important bit. Google recently landed the Equiano subsea cable at a place called Melkbosstrand, just north of Cape Town.
Melkbosstrand. You said that with an impressive amount of confidence.
I practiced. But the location matters less than the capacity. This cable is a complete game changer. It has dramatically increased the international bandwidth capacity and, crucially, reduced latency between Europe and South Africa.
Okay, but why does latency matter so much for a marketing assistant? If not like they're a professional gamer trying to get a millisecond advantage.
Because of how we all work now. We live in the cloud. Every tool we use, Google Docs, Zoom, Trello, Canva, Slack, is a cloud tool. If you have high latency, you get that awkward 3-second delay on video calls where everyone talks over each other.
Oh, I hate that. The classic, no, you go. No, sorry, you go first.
It just kills the flow of a conversation. It makes the remote experience feel distant and frustrating and clunky. With the low latency from the Equiano cable, the connection is snappy. It feels instant. It makes the remote experience feel local. You genuinely forget the person is 6,000 miles away because the technology just works seamlessly.
So the tech works, the culture fits, the time is right. Now, the big one. We have to talk money. We have some hard numbers from the VAConnect case study because at the end of the day, the CFO has to sign off on this, or if you're the owner, you have to sign the check.
We do, and this is where we get into the concept of risk-adjusted value. If we look at the pricing for 2024, VAConnect lists a full-time marketing assistant, and that's a dedicated human being, 160 hours a month, at approximately £2,150.
2,150 pounds. And for our listeners doing the conversion, or if you're dealing in local currency there, that is roughly $32,250 32,250 Rand.
Correct. About 32,250 Rand. Now, let's compare that to the UK cost we talked about at the beginning. A similar role in the UK would be about £2,333 in salary alone, and then you have to add that 20% overhead for insurance and pension, which brings you close to £3,000 or even more.
So you are saving roughly £1,000 a month straight off the top. But, and this is the crucial question, I think, are we just paying sweatshop rates? Is this ethical? Because I think a lot of listeners worry about that. They want a good deal, but they don't want to feel like they are exploiting anyone.
That is a vital question, and the answer really lies in something called purchasing power parity. That salary of 32,250 Rand a month is a solid middle-class professional salary in South Africa. It affords a good lifestyle. This isn't the absolute cheapest labor in the world. If you want the cheapest, you go to the bottom of the barrel on Fiverr, where people are working for pennies an hour. This is professional, skilled labor being paid a professional wage for their market, which happens to be at a significant discount for the UK buyer purely due to the currency exchange rates.
So it's not due to a lack of skill or exploitation. It's a win-win arbitrage.
It's a genuine win-win. You get a professional who is happy with their wage and feels valued, and you get a price that actually fits into an SME's budget.
This leads us nicely into the specific model that makes this work. We've mentioned VAConnect, and the distinction you made earlier was agency versus marketplace. Why does that distinction matter so much? Why shouldn't I just go find a South African freelancer on LinkedIn myself and save the agency fee?
It matters because of who carries the burden of management and risk. VAConnect describes itself as a managed virtual assistant agency. The critical distinction in that phrase is the word managed. The client isn't just buying hours from an individual, they are buying managed capacity.
Which means if my assistant gets sick or goes on holiday, I'm not just left in the lurch.
Exactly. Think about it. If you hire a freelancer directly, let's say you find someone great on LinkedIn, and they get the flu for a week, or their laptop breaks, or they have a family emergency, your project just stops. Dead in the water. You are the manager. You have to deal with it. You have to find a replacement.
I don't have time for that. That's the entire reason I hired them in the first place.
Precisely. If you use a managed agency like VAConnect, there's a whole infrastructure. There is coverage if someone is sick. There is IT support if a laptop dies. There is HR oversight. But the most impressive statistic to me in the documents we looked at was the retention rate. VAConnect maintains a 98% retention rate over a 14-month period.
98%. In the world of outsourcing and remote work, that is, that's unheard of. The churn is usually massive. People typically leave after 3 or 4 months as soon as they find a slightly better gig.
It is remarkably stable, and that stability is everything for a small business owner. You don't want to be retraining a new person every quarter. That wastes so much time and energy. That stability comes from their internal ecosystem. They aren't just a directory of names like a marketplace. They've built a whole infrastructure around the workers to support them.
I was looking at their training program, which is called VA Varsity. That's VA Varsity, just so we're clear. It's like an internal university for them.
It is, yeah. It's their own internal Udemy-style education portal, and it's free for all their VAs. And this is so critical for the client. Think about something complex like SEO, search engine optimization.
The dark art of getting seen on Google.
A very dark art. The rules change constantly. Google drops a new algorithm update every 6 months, and suddenly everything you knew about keywords and backlinks is wrong.
Right.
If you hire a solo freelancer, you have to just hope and pray that they are keeping themselves updated on their own dime and in their own time. Are they reading the latest industry blogs? Are they paying for courses? Maybe, maybe not. You have no way of knowing.
But with VA Varsity,
The agency updates the training centrally. So if Google changes its algorithm, VAConnect updates the course materials, the VA is required to take the new course as part of their job, and suddenly your assistant is completely up to date without you having to pay for their training or even nudge them to do it. It creates this closed loop of quality. You are effectively outsourcing your learning and development department as well.
and then there was the wellness stuff. They call it atomic energy.
Yes, atomic energy.
It sounded a bit sci-fi to me at first, or maybe like a superpower from a comic book. But when I read the details, personalized diet plans, exercise routines, mental mobility coaching, it actually makes a huge amount of business sense.
It absolutely does. We have to be honest about the realities of remote work. Burnout is the #1 killer of productivity and retention. Sitting at home, alone, staring at a screen for 8 hours a day, it takes a toll. It can be incredibly isolating. You can develop bad physical and mental habits. Atomic Energy is their proactive wellness initiative to keep the VAs physically and mentally healthy and engaged.
A healthy, happy worker is a productive worker. It's not rocket science.
It really isn't. And then there is Vapiness,
Vapiness.
the two-way happiness program. Again, it sounds a bit cute, but it addresses a really serious business issue: isolation and culture fit. Their whole model is based on ensuring the remote worker feels genuinely connected to the client's team culture. Their philosophy is small enough to care, big enough to guarantee quality. They are actively managing the happiness and integration of the worker so the client doesn't have to play therapist or HR manager.
I love that phrase. Small enough to care, big enough to guarantee quality.
Yeah.
It really highlights the fundamental difference between a cold, faceless algorithm like Upwork, where you're just a user ID and a star rating, and a human-centric agency model.
It does, but there's another layer of technology that we absolutely have to discuss, because you can't talk about content in 2025 without talking about AI.
The robot elephant in the room.
Indeed. The stats are pretty overwhelming. Something like 58% of professional marketers are using AI for drafts, and 89% of small business owners are using it. We are all using ChatGPT or Claude or something similar. But, and this is a really big but, we are starting to see a serious quality crisis emerge from it.
I've definitely noticed this. You read an article online, and halfway through you get this feeling, a human didn't write this. It just feels beige.
Beige is a very generous word. It's hallucinogenic beige. The data shows that pure, unedited AI content gets 5.44 times less traffic than human-written content. And the engagement times, how long people actually stick around to read it, are 41% shorter.
Why do you think that is? What's it lacking?
It lacks a soul. It lacks a point of view. It lacks specific lived experience. People click, they scan, they realize it's robotic, usually because of telltale words like delve or in the digital landscape or the overuse of crucial, and they bounce. They feel cheated, they came for insight, and they got a word salad.
So if AI is fast but bad and humans are good but slow and expensive, what's the answer?
The answer is what VAConnect and similar models are pioneering. They call it the humanization protocol. This is the workflow that combines the raw speed of AI with the soul and nuance of a human.
Okay, walk us through that workflow, because I think this could be the big aha moment for a lot of our listeners who are drowning in content needs but don't want to put out low-quality garbage.
Okay, picture this. You are the UK business owner. You're an expert in your field. Let's stick with sustainable architecture. You don't have time to sit down and write a 2,000-word article from scratch. But you have the knowledge. You have the strong opinions. You know what the key trends are.
Right. I know what I want to say, I just don't want to spend 4 hours typing it.
That's step one. You use ChatGPT or Claude as your creative partner. You dump your raw thoughts, your key points, your unique expertise into the prompt. Or maybe you just record a 5-minute voice note on your phone while you're driving and have the AI transcribe and structure it. The goal is to get a first draft.
Okay, so now I have a draft. It's got all my key points in it, but it still sounds like a robot wrote it.
Exactly. It has the facts, but it uses words like furthermore and in conclusion. It's generic. It has no flavor, no personality. That is step two. You send that generic draft to your VAConnect assistant.
And this is where the magic happens.
This is step three, transformation. The VA isn't writing from a blank page, which is the hardest, slowest part. They are editing. They are humanizing. They inject specific business examples and case studies that they know about because they work with you every single day. They remove the formal, clunky AI connectors. They adjust the rhythm and flow of the sentences. They add your specific tone of voice that they've come to learn.
So they're the ones who turn. Furthermore, it is of paramount importance that sustainable building practices are adopted for the purposes of environmental longevity. Into something like, look, if we don't start building this way, we're not just losing money, we're torching the planet.
Precisely. They act as the transformation engine. The result is you get the production efficiency of AI. You didn't stare at a blank page for 2 hours, but you get the authenticity and credibility of a human expert.
And the VA's role shifts in a really interesting way. They aren't just a transcriber or a low-level writer anymore. They're a strategic editor.
A strategic editor or a content humanizer, and that is a much higher value, more engaging role. It empowers the VA, it's more interesting and creative work for them, and it saves the client a massive amount of time. It transforms the whole workflow from creation to curation and refinement.
I want to pivot now to something that I know keeps a lot of business owners up at night. Security and data protection.
Essential, a huge concern.
The gut instinct for most people is, If I hire someone local sitting in my office where I can see them, it's safer. I know where my data is. If I hire someone in Africa, my intellectual property, my customer lists, it's all just gone.
That is the common belief, that proximity equals security. But the reality is actually quite counterintuitive. A managed offshore agency like VAConnect is often significantly safer than hiring a local remote worker or a random freelancer.
How is that possible?
Well, think about the typical freelancer environment. They are probably working from home, maybe on a personal laptop that their kids also use to play Minecraft. Maybe they're sitting in a coffee shop on unsecured public Wi-Fi because their home internet is down. Who is overseeing their data security protocols? Who is checking their firewall settings? Who ensures their software is up to date?
Nobody.
Nobody. It's the Wild West. You're just trusting them. But VAConnect VAs work within a managed IT infrastructure. They sign strict non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, as a condition of employment. But much more importantly, there is the legal framework. South Africa has a very robust data protection act called POPA, the Protection of Personal Information Act.
POPA.
And POPA is effectively the twin sister of the UK's GDPR. They align almost perfectly on the core principles of data handling, consent, and security.
So from a legal and compliance perspective, they are speaking the same language.
Precisely. This means that sharing a customer email list with a POPA-compliant South African agency is legally cleaner and safer than sending it to a freelancer in a jurisdiction that doesn't have these strong data protection laws, or even sending it to a local UK freelancer who doesn't have a formal data protection policy in place for their own one-person business.
That is a huge point. It's not just about trust, it's about documented compliance.
Exactly. It's a much more professional and secure setup.
So we have the why, the content crisis. We have the where, South Africa. We have the who, an agency like VAConnect. Now let's talk how. If a listener is sitting there thinking, okay, this sounds like exactly what I need, I'm drowning, help me. How do they actually implement this? What is the qualification criteria?
It doesn't work for everyone. It's really important to state up front. If you just need a single logo designed once, go to Fiverr. It's the right tool for that job. Don't hire an agency. The managed agency model works for businesses that have consistent volume.
And what kind of volume are we talking about?
You need roughly 10 hours of work a week, consistently. That is the starter package at VAConnect. It goes all the way up to 40 hours a week for a full-time dedicated role. If you don't have at least 10 hours of work a week to delegate, you probably aren't ready for a strategic assistant yet. You are still in that gig phase of just needing one-off tasks done.
And it's about strategic intent, right?
Yeah.
Not just tasks.
Yes. Are you trying to build a brand, or are you just trying to tick a box? If you are in a growth phase, if you are actively trying to scale your business, that is when you look at their scale packages, they have these great names like the Forge, the Summit, the Apex. These are for businesses that are ready to build a team, not just complete a task list.
Okay, let's talk about the timeline, because I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They expect miracles in week one. I hired a VA on Monday. Why isn't my entire marketing function fixed by Friday?
Managing expectations is absolutely critical, and VAConnect seems to be very clear about this. The sources we read outline a very clear 4-phase timeline for onboarding. Phase 1 is weeks 1 and 2. It's called scoping. You're not really getting much output yet. This is the time for explaining who you are, what your brand stands for, how you like to work. You're setting up the systems.
The getting to know you phase.
Exactly. Then you move into phase 2, which is weeks 3 through 6. This is foundation building. And this is where the friction happens. This is the hard part. It involves heavy feedback loops. The VA sends you a draft. You have to correct it. They send another one. You have to correct it again. You might feel like I'm spending more time explaining this than it would take to just do it myself.
And that's where people quit. That's the danger zone, isn't it?
That is the valley of despair, as it's sometimes called. But you have to push through it. Because if you invest the time and give clear feedback in this phase, you hit phase 3, which is months 2 and 3. And this is optimization. Suddenly, the owner's review time for a blog post drops from 90 minutes down to 30 minutes, then 15 minutes. The VA just gets it. The trust builds exponentially.
And then phase 4, what does that look like?
Month 4 and beyond. This is the mature partnership. The VA is no longer just executing your ideas. They start proactively suggesting topics. Hey, I saw this news story in our industry. We should write a response piece. Or, hey, I noticed our LinkedIn engagement has been a bit low. Let's try a poll or a video clip this week. They become a strategic partner.
There was a great real-world example of a legal firm in the notes.
Yes. They said they found the first month incredibly slow. They were frustrated. They honestly thought about quitting the service. But they stuck with it, and by month 3, the VA was repurposing their webinar content independently. The business owner didn't even have to ask. The VA would watch the webinar, pull out the best 60-second clip for LinkedIn, write a summary for the newsletter, and just send the finished package for a final approval. That's the end goal. That's true leverage.
That brings us to the final and maybe most important point, the mental shift.
This is the most important takeaway from the whole deep dive, I think. You have to move your mindset away from outsourcing, which implies getting rid of tasks you hate, to strategic extension.
Strategic extension. I really like that phrase.
It means you are expanding your team's footprint and capability. You have to treat the VA as a valued colleague, not as a faceless task robot. VAConnect's philosophy is we create happy spaces, and being your left and right hand, you can't be someone's right hand if the brain doesn't tell you what it's thinking. You have to communicate. You have to invite them to the virtual team meeting. You have to treat them like a human being on your team.
So let's try and bring this all together.
Yeah.
We started today in the content graveyard, the tragedy of good businesses with bad or non-existent marketing execution.
A strategic capacity crisis, not a laziness problem.
We looked at why the old ways fail, the crippling cost of London hires, the low quality and high friction of the race-to-the-bottom gig platforms.
And the transactional paradigm that kills your brand voice and creates that tonal whiplash for your audience.
We then explored the UK-South Africa corridor, the perfect time zone alignment for real-time collaboration, the cultural and linguistic fit, the solid infrastructure like the Equiano cable.
And that crucial risk-adjusted value, where 32,250 Rand is a great professional salary that translates to an affordable cost for a UK business.
And we looked at the VAConnect model, the managed agency versus the Wild West of the marketplace, the importance of continuous training with VA Varsity, the focus on wellness with atomic energy, and that brilliant humanization protocol that combines AI efficiency with human authenticity.
Which is really the future of content production, I think. It's not about AI replacing humans. It's about AI plus humans replacing humans who refuse to use AI.
So as we wrap up, what is the final provocative thought you want to leave our listeners with today?
You know, we often tell ourselves a story that technology, things like AI and globalization, things like outsourcing, are forces that remove the human element from business. We tend to think they make things colder, more robotic, more disconnected. We fear that by outsourcing, we're somehow losing control or losing our company's soul. But I think what this deep dive suggests is actually the complete opposite. By using the right structure, these managed agencies, and by using the right tools like AI drafts, we actually free up humans to do the high-value connection work they're meant to do. The VA isn't a robot. They are a supported, trained, creative professional. The business owner isn't a stressed-out, overworked admin anymore. They are a strategic leader again, free to think about the big picture.
So the question for you, the listener, is this. Are you still trying to replicate a £50 million company's marketing department with zero budget and pure, unsustainable willpower? Or are you ready to build a strategic extension that actually fits the size and ambition of your business right now?
That is the question.
Something to think about as you look at your empty content calendar for next week. That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you in the next one.
Goodbye.